internet. Yo, stop your grinning and drop your linen. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them fucking each other over for a percentage. My name is Shahir Dowd. Welcome.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film Aliens.
Aliens with an S.
S. Yes.
S for sequel.
But much like this being the sequel to Alien, now there's more than one alien. There's more than one reviewer, more than usual in this room.
I feel like today's kind of like show and tell.
Okay.
Because for the as long as we've been running this podcast, I've been talking about a robot music video that I've been working on.
You know, I'm not familiar with that at all.
The conversation about the robot.
Sure.
This week we launched the robot music video.
Yes.
And so I brought with me
my
two collaborators.
Yes.
Nigel Stanford, the artist.
Hello.
And Timur, Civan, the cinematographer.
Hello.
I thought you guys were going to yell, get away from her, you bitch, to me.
Was that my cue? Yeah. I'll do it. Yeah.
No, do it now.
Do it now.
Get away from her, you bitch. There we go. Yeah. We're off to the right start.
Chills down my spine.
Welcome, guys. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you guys, Timur, you listen to the podcast. I'm saying that like incredulously.
Every time we get someone who listens to us, he's so fucking shocked.
I feel like we do the podcast into like the ether and it just kind of like is out there. I never feel like anyone listens to it.
We put out an okay product. People enjoy it that accidentally find it.
Dude, I consume 2 per day that I work because I have an hour drive in and an hour's drive home.
And so where do you fit on the spectrum of Matt to Shahir? Like if there was like...
I enjoy fun, but I also like smart. So I'm right in the middle.
He's the perfect fusion, Shahir. We might have to kill him.
Right. It's like if you and I had a child who grew up at the same time as us.
Exactly. Time paradox. Yeah. Nigel too, buddy.
Yeah.
Hey, nice to meet you finally. I've seen you in the video, the aforementioned video, and it's nice to put an actual person to a celebrity on the screen.
Oh, I am an actual person, yeah.
But Nigel, you and I have worked together, all the three of us have worked together now on 2 different music videos. We worked on a third-ish right now. But we kind of have a mutual love of A, James Cameron, B, of science fiction cinema. I think every time we get together to talk about a music video, the first reference points we always come to are something science fiction. Is that kind of your bag? That's where you're kind of about?
I love it. That's my favorite genre of movie, and yeah, we always
for some reason we spend endless hours.
Well, we've been working together now for nearly 4 years, and we've made 2.25 videos. So. I'm kind of half a science fiction guy. I kind of like science. I only like I like aliens, but I don't love I don't know. I'm not a big Star Trek fan, for example. I'm not a Star Wars fan. What are you kind of into? I feel like I know, but for our listeners. For me, the reason I like sci-fi is it's just real life and drama, but it's in the future. So,
right.
I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I love the movies. They're fun, they're enjoyable, but they're also like magic.
Right.
It's like, oh, there's the Force, and there's like lightsabers that look ridiculous. How are you stopping bullets with lightsabers? And
right.
They're like traveling at the speed of light, and you're swinging it.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. Whereas like hard sci-fi is like, it doesn't have to actually be fantastical at all. I'm not so into like hobbits and dwarves and magic and things like that. But sci-fi is like, it could be reality. It's just 100 years from now.
More the sci than the fi at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've kind of, I think, like the interesting thing that I wanted to bring up is like when we shot Cymatics, which is a music video maybe some of our listeners have seen, where we did real science experiments that made music. And it was, I'm going to say that fairly successful. It did well.
I liked it. It was great.
Yeah.
Nigel, were you the guy jumping in the chainmail getting zapped by the Tesla coil?
I am in the chainmail getting zapped, but the actual final jump was done by a guy who's a dancer because,
Fair enough.
I don't have that agility to
And I will say I made that person do it 5 times, and afterwards he was like, I feel a little woozy right now. I was like, how would you feel about doing another one?
He had to go home, I think.
He did have to go home.
In a stretcher.
But so it was it was pretty successful. I'd like to think it was. And then it's successful enough to warrant kind of a follow-up, which is Automatica, the video that we released this week, the robot music video that we've been talking about for a while. And I remember when we were on set, and I think we talked about this a little bit because Automatica was slightly kind of a step further into the fantastical Even though it is still based on real robots playing music, there was a lot of work done in terms of getting these robot performers, these KUKA robots, to actually play the correct notes. There's the last part of the video, if you've gone and seen it by this point, gets slightly into the more science fiction-y world that we've been talking about, which is why we wanted to talk about aliens. And I remember on set, I think the first thing I said was, to the crew when we landed was like, today we're going to do cymatics by way of James Cameron. Now, I wasn't saying that I'm James Cameron. I'm just saying we were kind of like looking at that thing.
He was implying.
I was implying that I'm a brown James Cameron, but but I think we were all excited by the idea of doing kind of a big action-y kind of piece in the vein of James Cameron.
There's lasers and explosions.
There's lasers, explosions,
things like this.
Yeah.
And just for everybody at home, it was shooting robots with robots.
Yeah. So,
if you see the BTS, you'll understand that the camera was actually on the big Megillah monster 40-ton robot, which was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. But
and Timur, well, getting to you, Timur, you've shot both these videos now.
Yes.
And I think every time we see you on set when we're doing something like this, you have this big ear-to-ear grin on your face. And
robots, man.
Hot robot on robot action from what I'm hearing.
Yes.
What's your you're obviously an incredibly talented cinematographer. What do you love in cinema? Like where do you stand? We've talked about fun and not being stupid, which is obviously a dig at Matt, not me, but
disagree.
Well, just like a super quick background. I mean, I came from the arts.
Right.
I was a sculptor. So for me, anything that I guess you could say the more difficult, the better.
Yeah.
Because nothing good ever comes easy. You
Right.
know? So if you say, yes, we're going to shoot this music video at 1/10 speed and then play it back at real time and then shoot it again on the giant robot.
Yeah.
I'm like, yes, we're going to do that. I'm going to have to invent ways of doing things that we haven't figured out before. And Nigel's going to sit at a computer for 11 months programming things to work perfectly at 1/10 speed,
And so what Timur's talking about is the fact that in essence, and this is something that I think I love about James Cameron's work as well, is that we kind of came up with a weird shooting style where the robots that you see in Automatica they can move at the speed that they're moving at in real life, but unfortunately, in order to do that, they need to be anchored into the ground with concrete, and that's something we couldn't do. So in order to fake that or to cheat that, we would shoot them at 1/10 their speed and then play it back in at 25 frames. So you kind of got the estimation of motion that would be realistic.
Yeah, we shot at 2.5 frames, right? It was almost time lapse.
Well, we would do a big mixed bag of them. Like for every shot we did in Automatica, I think roughly there would be at least an hour prep for every single shot, where Nigel would be saying, well, we need to do this shot in 2.5 frames, and then it's 25 frames, and then at 12 frames. And then we'd kind of like make the math work. Was that kind of your recollection of it all? Or
yeah, there's certain things the robots are doing real time, and there's other ones 1/5 speed, and and then I have to walk in front of them in real time. So the camera robot has to be programmed to do that move slow and then do the exact same move fast. And hopefully later on you can stitch it together and I look like I'm in front of the robots.
The saddest part of the whole thing, Nigel, was that we never got to use the sound the camera robot made.
Well,
what sound did the camera robot make?
It made the most beautiful, perfect science fiction robot noises. It was like,
Aww.
I'm sure we have that.
It was
Nigel,
amazing.
you actually did use some of that. You like mixed in some of that.
I mixed in the robots that we shot on in front of the camera, but I'm sure there's some behind the scenes one. We can get that sound and we can splice it into this.
I could listen to
podcast
that all day
if you really want to do that.
And
I could listen to it all day long. And I don't know if you guys were aware, but like every time the robot would fire up, the entire camera crew would gather around me and they go, "Oh my god, here it comes, here it comes!" And then like it would start making the amazing noise, and everybody would just go, "Yes."
So this is how we all lose our jobs. By the way,
Hey, let's just keep training them. No, my question sort of to you guys, I guess it's to all three of you. I don't really want to interview Shira. I see him all the time. But like, so this in this music video, the robots eventually, as the music is being played, and again, this is a spoiler if you haven't seen it. If you haven't seen this video yet, stop this now and watch the video. But they start to become a little bit more than machines, sentient, if you will. Now working, because I've heard Shahir's accounts of how fucking complicated it was to make these robots play music and do the things you made them do. even with the camera too, the camera robot, did you ever have moments with using this technology where you actually started to get even an inkling of that sort of idea, like, oh shit, this is where Skynet comes from? Like, did they ever do something that shocked you in that way?
Actually, no.
Thank God you answered exactly how I wanted.
Yeah, what's funny is that what I realized going through the whole thing is just how goddamn stupid they are. You know, like they would. It was literally a solid block of metal until you programmed into it exactly what it needed to do.
Gotcha.
And there was a person running a computer from 1994 running MS-DOS, because that's the only program that runs the giant robot computer arm thing, who had to sit there plotting coordinates in space manually. She had like a slide rule and a chart.
Yeah.
Wow.
And was plotting them in, and like moving the camera up 2 inches took 20 minutes because she had to replot the entire line. And it was every time we would get there, I would say, can we come up 3 inches? And she would look at me and go, okay.
Yes.
And then she was like, I'll need a minute. And then you just hear
Wow.
for like 20 minutes, and then it was perfect.
All right.
I think this is I've worked on a few music videos now. This is the one music video where I've seen the most calculators on set at any one time. Like every time we did a move, there was calculators out. And Nigel and I would argue a lot about our respective math on.
We nearly came to blows a couple times.
A couple of times.
Oh, math fight?
Yeah, it was a
math fight.
I was like, this is going to work if we change the frame rate to this and this. And, it all worked out in the end, but it took a long time.
It took a long time.
Bit of
I think
stress.
to Timur's point as well is that these robots we do use can be algorithmically programmed to do certain things
Sure.
In response to outside stimuli, so they can actually. And we were very cautious with these robots because if they do swing it at their full speed, they can kill you.
They will kill you.
And so we were like always, keep at least 10 feet away from the robots whenever anyone's doing any operation around them. I think we heard a story, very unfortunately, that because these robots are often deployed in factories. A week after we'd actually shot Automatica, one of the somebody who might have been close to one of these robots was killed. Not even in America. Not that makes it any better.
Yeah. Oh, thank God.
Yeah.
One less American down.
But these robots are particularly dangerous. But to Timur's point, I think the way in which we were using them was fairly sort of move here, then here, then here, and being robots, in the sort of tactical definition of that term, they moved there to there to there.
Right. All right.
But with zero regard for what was in the way.
Oh, of course.
During.
That's how I would want. I like my robots that way.
Yeah,
I don't want them thinking about me.
I believe you had told me a story, Nigel, that you had misprogrammed one of the downstrokes and it pushed its way through a keyboard and through a table.
No, it wasn't that, but one of the robots, you program them at like super slow speeds and you run your program and make sure nothing hits something else, and then you can run it at full speed. And this one time I was running it at slow speed and the battery ran out of my camera and I got distracted, and when I looked back, the robot had hooked itself under the other one and lifted it off the ground.
Oh.
These,
and I was like,
yeah. And these are what, $30,000 robots, each of them? Or?
Well, I didn't own the robots, of course, and they were pretty scratched, but Kuka luckily never tried to charge me for that. So
there's a scene in the music video where you see two robots at a turntable and their arms kind of cross over each other, and they happen to be only like a millimeter apart. And what Nigel has to do is basically do the measurements of like where they're standing and how far the reach is. And if he gets that a couple of millimeters wrong, those robots hit each other. And as he just described, they can pick each other up and kill a human being. So
okay.
If you program them to do that.
Yeah. If we wanted to, we could program them to kill someone.
They're like a dumb arm, but you could program anything, artificially intelligent in your computer that's controlling them, and they could, be the extension of something with intelligence. But I don't have the intelligence to program something like that. So these were just following my little moves.
Just to that point, I wanted to say something about Nigel's work in the videos, which is that I think it's something that not a lot of people actually realize, is that Nigel spends a lot of the time kind of so with cymatics, it was kind of creating the experiments and then taking the notes and then creating a piece of music afterwards, which is unusual for a music video. In Automatica, it was slightly a sort of similar-ish process, although the interesting thing is that with these robots, they're playing the exact notes that you hear. However, they're playing, like, if you actually heard them on set, they sound generally pretty awful, because that's that thing that humans can do that robots can't do, which is that robots can't have nuance when they're playing a string or something like that, or they can't, if they're playing a piano, they just hit the note like a knock. Whereas, Nigel's got to take that note and turn it into something that has like detail and nuance. And I think that's something that kind of people miss a lot of the times, is that you're basically interpreting the language or the way a robot would play an instrument into something that sounds good to human beings, right?
Exactly.
And I would yet
Affirmative.
Robots can't do that yet.
One day when we were doing research, we did a lot of research for the video. We went up to the MIT Media Lab, and we talked to a lot of roboticists who were working in that field, and there was a lot of interesting conversations about like what makes, for example, Yo-Yo Ma, when he plays a cello, what are the unique properties that make a Yo-Yo Ma
His
cello?
specific,
and it has to do with things like the way in which he holds the cello, how closely he holds it to his body,
micro movement, micro like muscle.
Yeah,
sort of.
how strong his left arm is compared to his right arm for whatever reason. Like details like that.
Right.
Which robots, are dumb.
I'm so proud of you. You didn't make a joke about masturbation. You came this close. And I saw it. I saw it in your fucking eyes. And he didn't do it.
I was this close that I realized I was going to make a masturbation joke about Yo-Yo Ma, which is like,
yeah. This is how long we've done this, guys. I can watch his face.
Shahir makes jokes.
Oh, attempted.
Yeah, attempted jokes. We usually cut them out.
My last question. I was thinking about this when I watched it because I'm this guy. Did you guys name the robots? I know you worked with two. Did you ever name them?
No, we had three.
Oh, you had
We had
three. Sorry.
robots. Yeah.
They were just 0, 1, and 2, unfortunately.
Binary.
But,
They were named binary.
well, that's almost binary. 2 is like way off the binary chart, but that's almost appropriate.
You mean 0, 1, 0?
Yeah. All right.
That's probably not right, but
No.
No, because I feel like if you name them, you're absolutely right. If you name them, then you're inviting the kind of terror I was asking about beforehand. You just kept it real and kept it about your job. And
at least we didn't name them Abbott and Costello.
Oh, yeah. Like another movie we reviewed
like
recently.
Arrival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Timur was holding back his thoughts. Apparently, he was yelling at us when we were
Absolutely screaming at my dashboard.
Oh no! Do you want to do your one line review of Arrival?
No, because somebody here hasn't seen it, and he's already threatened our lives with.
Block my
He's threatened our lives with
all right,
letting out spoilers.
Fair enough.
So, to everyone who's listening, and if you are want to write us in with specific movies that you'd like us to see, please write us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod, or check out our website at www.onlymoviepodcast.com, where you can request movies like Aliens. We did this specifically because we wanted to get the three of us together to talk in relation to the release of Automatica, and we wanted to talk specifically about a movie that we all kind of are passionate about. But you can request movies, if you wanted us to watch, for example, I've been trying to get Matt to watch Santiago, the 7.5-hour film from Bellatar for a while.
Yeah.
If someone is bold enough to request that,
sure.
we will do
Or
that.
maybe someone could help me out next Christmas and we could do Jingle All the Way.
Not gonna happen.
Well, here's the deal, Shahir. You after the Assassin's Creed thing, which you jumped away from, you owe me at this point. So you're going to I will make sure that this debt gets paid.
Are we by definition picking a movie that's going to be terrible? Is that what we were saying?
No, we're just picking one that's going to be awesome that you'll hate.
Right.
But that is not what we're all here to speak about today.
We're talking about James Cameron's follow-up to Ridley Scott's 1979, I would argue, masterpiece at this point.
Sure.
Ridley Scott's film Alien. Timur leaned in.
Had the fucking dagger eyes at you.
Timur leaned in, and he really had dagger eyes about Alien. So we're talking about LV-426, the alien planet, which the crew members of the Nostromo had to land upon. I'm still talking about Ridley Scott's film, and discovered an alien species, which then causes havoc upon the Nostromo crew, leaving one survivor, Sigourney Weaver, Ellen Ripley,
and a cat.
Jonesy, the orange cat.
Yeah.
So how long was the difference? It was like 10 years between. So they had to get a new fat cat, right?
I'm sure
7 years.
7 years. Yeah. So a new ginger cat, I'm sure, would have to appear.
It's fine.
It looked very similar.
Yeah.
There's
a lot of close-ups of the cat.
Whoever was the cat wrangler did follow up well.
Was a very pretty cat.
Was a very pretty cat.
This has been the only podcast about Ripley's cat.
Yeah. And now we're talking about the what year was it? It was
86.
86 follow-up, directed by one James Cameron, a person who we've referenced many times on this podcast, I believe, at this point.
Not Shahir pretending to
be James Cameron. Shahir, James Dowd Cameron.
Yeah.
Where Ellen Ripley is discovered, her floating hibernation pod is discovered, and through a series of events is required to return back to LV-426 in order to save some colonizers who have been on the planet for the last 20 years from a potential alien threat. So, gentlemen, what is your opinion of aliens? Well, what's your feeling about the whole alien mythology? I mean, there are 5 films deep, not counting the Alien versus Predator films.
Those don't exist.
The Alien versus Predator films don't exist, right?
Well, are we counting Prometheus as one of them?
Yeah, that's the 5th.
Yes.
Okay. Because see, here's the thing with Prometheus, and I liked a lot of Prometheus. I just thought that they were so like in the beginning, and maybe it was just sort of the media rollout of the film or whatever it was, but they were like, no, this is not about aliens. And then like it obviously was. Yeah. And then they're like, okay. So I always had a little bit of a sore spot. I was just like, so you wanted to get away from it, and then you literally didn't, and then you're like, oh, it's fine now. So that's like, and that might be the marketing of it and whatnot, but like it just always bugged me that he was like, nope, this isn't about that. This is something else. Of course it's not.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things about Prometheus that it's actually funny. Is there's a little bit of a tale to it. Is that it came out during the boom of the 3D movies.
It's a beautiful 3D movie.
Yeah, it was great in 3D. Fuck 3D.
Yeah. Nigel, I think you and I saw it in 3D.
It was, it was in 3D and, blah, blah, blah and all this shit. But this is what's interesting is, and Prometheus was ostensibly a terrible film. It
50-50 on that.
It had terrible moments.
Wait, hold on. But I hated it when I saw it in the theater, right? 6-8 months later, came out on Blu-ray. I was watching with my friend, and we went and we watched the deleted scenes. There's like 35 minutes of movie that was cut out. That's finished and graded.
Does it make sense?
Absolutely. It's a phenomenal movie when you put all the deleted shit back in. But it was limited because you cannot watch 3D for more than 2 hours. Your eyes hurt.
Oh, shit.
So the fucking studio hobbled this movie at the knees. And if you go back and watch Ridley Scott's like interviews about the movie, he's sitting there with this scowl of disgust that they cut basically everything that makes sense about the movie out of the movie.
Wow.
Now I only take some.
not everything.
I take
It's
a
not
little
perfect.
exception to that.
It's not perfect, but it at least makes sense.
Did they cut out Charlize Theron running in a zigzag pattern away from the giant rolling thing, or was that always just going to run that track marathon?
I think it just ran the track.
God damn it.
The only thing I take exception with there is that Ridley Scott is a filmmaker known to release multiple versions of his film. And one thing that kind of starts to irk me a little bit with him as a filmmaker is that I feel like at some point during the editing process, he loses control of his film. And this is Ridley Scott we're talking about. He's among the bearded white men greats that rule, blockbuster Hollywood cinema as we know it. So I always find it a little difficult sometimes to believe that a person like Ridley Scott, is always hobbled by the studio, because every film he does, like you look at Kingdom of Heaven, has a director's cut which is profoundly different to the theatrical version. Blade Runner is another film. Alien is another film. Prometheus is another film. A lot of movies he does seems to have like this alternate director's cut, which is always superior to the film. But I always find it hard to believe that like a studio goes to Ridley Scott, your really good version that you like, we don't like it. I
100% believe that. I mean, and then why would there be two versions otherwise?
Maybe he doesn't have the time to finish it correctly.
Yeah, that's what
it comes out, and then it's got another year, and he gets it right.
And I would take that.
That's what I think it is.
But that's still, in my opinion, that's still hindrance from the studio. Do you know what I mean? Because if
they're like, get it out
get it out now, and he's like,
we need it out now.
Yeah, I mean, so it's the same thing.
I just tend to think he probably. It seems like he has there's some issue that happens in editing with him where I think it's what Nigel says, which is that he makes the movie he makes, and then a year later he's like, actually, that thing I took out, I probably shouldn't have took out.
I think it's a time thing. I think it's all the.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the.
It's just it happens so much with him.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Well,
like
he wants to make 3-hour movies.
Yeah,
and studios don't want to sell 3-hour movies because that's one less showing.
But if we look at a person like James Cameron, who's on the opposite side of that spectrum, who basically had this director's cut issue happen with the film we're talking about. later on went to make 3-hour movies that were incredibly successful, and people like Peter Jackson do as well. I mean, it just I take a little bit of exception to that, to this notion that it's Ridley Scott being hobbled by the studio, but given that it happens so often with him, like there's so many of his major works are, there's a director's cut.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. And there, I'm sure that there's an element. I mean, look, we don't know.
I have no idea. I'm speculating.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice whole nonsense
Fool
thing
me
too.
5 times.
Because he probably goes in and either believes or thinks he'll be able to do it in the time constraint that he wants, and then all of a sudden, like the deal that he signed, like, yes, I will get this movie finished by this date, is up, and he's like, oh crap, like that's what it feels like, and then he probably acts as though, I can't do whatever. But on the other side, it's the 3D thing is very interesting because
I think it was more of just a technical constraint.
I didn't realize that about 2 hours and
there's like I mean, that's
people
just
start to vomit.
That's
Or
just
something.
it's uncomfortable after a long period of time.
It's difficult on your eyes after a while.
Why?
and-
But hang on, wasn't Avatar like super long?
Yeah, Avatar was 3 hours
I
and
don't know.
3
yeah,
days.
and I had a
Fire.
fucking headache at the end of Avatar.
I had a headache with Avatar just based on its plot. But that's neither here nor there.
Pocahontas?
Yeah, or Fern Gully or Dances with Wolves. You can just
We're gonna
mash them
talk
all
about
together.
We're going to talk about Avatar a lot. I feel in the course of our conversation with aliens.
Oh,
No,
good.
we're not.
Yeah, we are.
No, we're not.
The only
Shahir.
thing we'll
Timur.
really say is
let's just make a rule here.
Aliens is good and Avatar is bad.
I think I want to get to why Avatar has problems. But
Hang on, which movie are we reviewing?
we're gonna review aliens, and I'm gonna give my opinion because I want you guys to have more time than me. But I absolutely adore aliens. I didn't. The funny thing with me is I watched Alien 3 first.
Out of all of them?
Out of all of them, it's still the one
That's
I've
strange.
watched most. And that's not because I think it's the best one. It's just that when I was younger, it was the one that I had recorded on VHS off TV, and so I would just have a copy of it all the time, so I would watch it often.
I actually like that one. I
I
know a
like
lot of
Alien,
people hate
yeah.
it, but I don't hate it at all.
That
I
was
hated it when I was little. When I watched it when I was little, I was like, this is weird and boring and kind of scary, and I don't really get it because I didn't really catch all the stuff. Rewatching it now, I think it's great. I really do like it.
Unfortunately, unlike all the others, the special effects did not hold up
No.
Right.
in Alien 3.
Yeah.
And it's a
which is
smaller
weird.
film, weirdly enough, than Aliens was. Like,
Yeah.
Aliens has
It's huge.
action.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Aliens, I watched it on the special edition Blu-ray thing, the highest remastered. And I remember looking at it and being like, if they release this today,
It would be amazing.
I would look at it and go, fuck, these guys did a great job.
Yeah, it's what's remarkable about Aliens is how well it holds up today.
Oh.
And not just from a visual and effects point of view, but the thing that always strikes me, because that's what James Cameron is known for. He's known for this. He's this guy who pioneers 3D, who made the morphing effect. The liquid metal man in Terminator 2. Came up with the robotic stop motion in Terminator. He's sort of known for his ability to wrangle effects together. But what I'm always struck by is something that he's not as well known for. Like even people look at Titanic today as a dated movie about, like the way in which it treats human relationships feels very like movie-like. But the way in which he does this narrative about a mother who's lost her child, who then has to take on a surrogate child in Aliens, I think is remarkably subtly well handled. It's something
Absolutely.
that it's something that I think to me it is the thing that makes this movie work.
Oh,
without
question, yeah.
Without question, this is, and so, the thing about James Cameron that I think people always forget is he's a really exceptional writer. Occasionally, he's exceptional in that he writes big movies with real heart. And I think that's something we don't see a lot of today. Really,
From him either.
yeah. And I think the thing if we just quickly jump to Avatar, to me, the problem with Avatar is it's a lot of repeated ideas that James Cameron has done in other movies, and he's done them better in other movies. So that's kind of why I think Avatar doesn't work as well. But Aliens, the main takeaway is that human element to it that I absolutely adore. The second is the sense of escalation that he can do better than most action movie directors can do, which is that when the movie escalates from one threat to the next, there is a real sense that the story is expanding and opening up for a meaningful reason. It's not just, we had a sort of 5 people set piece here. We're going to have to do a 20 people set piece here.
Right.
It's more that scenes escalate for a real, genuine reason. So, and then on top of that, I actually really do believe that Alan Ripley in this movie is the greatest action hero that's ever been written.
I absolutely. Actually, it was funny as I posted that on Facebook the other day. Where I was like, Ellen Ripley is, in my opinion, the best hero out of all of them because she's the one that, by herself, in the middle of a melting down nuclear plant. I mean, maybe this goes into spoiler territory, I suppose.
Yeah, this one's a little bit.
But they steal her. The bad guy steals her child. She loads up.
Yeah, she
gets in the fucking elevator by her goddamn self,
and we believe
says to the robot flying the ship, "Circle around. I'll be back in 5 minutes." And you know what? She's back in 5 minutes with the child.
And I completely believe it as well. That's the thing.
Well, we'll get into sort of the believability of this film after in a little bit because I do 100% agree. Nigel, what about you? Did you have a history with this franchise at all?
I did. And I love movies, but I was never enough of a nerd about it to have posters on the wall.
Don't say it like it's a bad thing.
No,
want to be in a podcast about it.
But this movie, I saw Aliens first. I didn't see Alien till after Aliens. I didn't see Alien 3 till years after it came out for some reason. I saw Aliens. It was the only movie I ever saw twice in the theater.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I bought a magazine which had pictures of that because I just thought the actual aliens were so interesting to look at, and you don't actually get to see them very much. They're on screen for half a second in this movie until right at the end. And then I also had the novelization of the screenplay, which is really interesting because there's a couple of deleted scenes that they shot, and I've seen pictures of that are not in the special edition.
Oh, interesting.
And so I was just in love with this film, and I had nightmares about it as well. But just for whatever reason, everything kind of felt believable, and it was this future world that I kind of wanted to be in, but was also terrified by.
Right.
Yeah, and I loved it, and I think everything James Cameron did after that for the next 3 or 4 movies was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
What about rewatching it now?
Rewatching it now, when I started, I watched it last night, and I thought, some of the initial scenes, some of the acting was a little bit off.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that's actually most dated to me is the sound. You hear lines that you can't, the microphone's too far away. And
there's clearly an ADR line.
There's a lot, the ADR is less believable than today, and they didn't have digital compositing. But after 3 or 4 scenes, I instantly felt you're right. This could come out today, and nothing about it would feel even the rear projection shots of things exploding in the background. You can tell contrast isn't quite right. To nerd out about the effects for a second, it just works, and it's organic, and it feels kind of real.
Yeah. Exactly. Organic is the correct word. It just feels like it's a living thing.
And it feels all consistent. I think consistency, especially if we're looking at an 86 movie done very well, but then watching it today in 2017, the fact that even the rear projected stuff that you're talking about, or all the stuff just feels, no effect feels lame or different enough to take you out of you're in it, you watch it for the first 10 minutes, you're like, oh, this is the world I'm presented, and that has to do with art direction, that has to do with all the way they did the effects, etc. This movie has such a nice, it's packaged so well with what it does, and I completely agree with that.
And I was lucky to come along at a time before CG.
Yeah.
In some ways, because Alien 3 obviously doesn't stack up with its CG.
And it had stop motion stuff in it too. The compositing was really bad.
Yeah,
right.
In Alien 3,
in Alien 3, it looked really bad. But the compositing stuff in Aliens was beautiful.
It's funny. I have a book about James Cameron that I got many years ago. It's sort of a cheapish biography of him, but he did talk about the fact that if he was asked to do Aliens now, it would all be CG, and he thinks that inherently the film would probably be lesser for it because the amount of work that they put into making the alien queen, for example, probably, and the fact that when you were on set, you had this alien queen that was this size running, kind of moving towards you. And for the other actors, it was kind of there was this visceral sense that something is coming towards you. And, you felt it, the presence of it in the room.
Wasn't a tennis ball on a pole.
No, it wasn't a tennis ball.
You know what's funny, though? And I'd never seen it before until I,
the garbage.
Saw it on the Blu-ray. No, there's one shot when you first are introduced the first shot of the queen when the mouth comes out and she actually realized that it's, oh shit, it's an alien. It's a really big one.
Yeah.
There's a second shot right after when the mouth first comes out where she's basically screaming, roaring or hissing or whatever it is that it does. And the neck foam rubber opens for a second and you see a big like metal girder on the inside.
Oh, man.
And I was like, no, it's not real.
There's so much KY. It's actually KY lube on them that it's like you kind of just buy into the whole thing. But Timur, give us your aliens story, bruh.
Well, you see, it's funny as everything comes back to Star Wars on the only podcast in that movie.
God, here we go.
Measurably, I've seen Star Wars at least 1,000 times.
Right.
Because as a child, I watched it twice a day, every day, from ages 3 to 6.
There was a morning session and an afternoon session.
A morning session and an afternoon session. It was my babysitter, self-imposed babysitter.
Right.
I still have the VHS tape and it's threadbare. Like the tape is clear at this point.
Right.
Wow.
So Star Wars I have a stronger religious affiliation with Star Wars than I do with whatever my parents raised me as. However, aliens.
You can't remember.
I can't
because you were too busy watching Star Wars.
You can't compete with that amount of time.
But when I was a little kid, I watched Aliens, and I was always terrified of monsters and scary stuff. Would lose sleep over it, throwing up in the middle of the night out of fear. Just there's monsters under my bed. And I wanted to get over that, I suppose. So I asked my parents, "Can I watch Aliens?" Because it was the scariest thing ever made. Right. And they were looked at me like, son, you crazy. Like, what are you doing?
Were you kind of using the snake poison kind of theory?
I figured, fuck it. If I'm going to do this, let me jump in head first and just see what this thing is about. Because I think it was scarier not having seen it and knowing that this movie existed than it was to just sit down and watch it. So I sat down and watched it. And by the end, I was like, again.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I need to see that thing again. It was beautiful. Like Nigel had remarked at how beautiful. I mean, it is, HR, Giger, it's the most beautiful thing, that anyone's ever thought of. It's this bizarrely sexual.
The alien itself.
The alien itself. The animal, the creature, the xenomorph, which I hate that word.
I love that word.
I hate that fucking word. But it's like, it's this conceptually pure terror, but it's like glossy and made of glass and plastic and steel, and it's wet for some reason.
Yeah.
And
it's like the Cadillac of monsters.
Yeah,
it's really
like, and it's like in my head as a kid, I'm like, why is it always wet? Like, where is this liquid coming from?
It's sweating.
It's sweating, It must be really hot.
Every time it kills someone, at the end of it, it just sits down and is like, God.
Oh my God. I need a beer. But so I watched Alien a lot, and I, got really into the artwork of,
H.R. Giger, Giger.
See, I learned it was Giger was the way I was taught.
He's Dutch, right? Or Swedish?
Swiss.
Okay.
We'll say Geiger. How about that? And so I got really into the artwork, which led to other things, and really developed a love of science fiction, which led me to Blade Runner. And then I learned that Blade Runner and Aliens were made by the same person.
Right.
Exactly. As like a 12-year-old, I was like, what? I felt like I was in on some secret. It was like, none of my friends know who this Ridley Scott man is. I do. And so, for me, Aliens has always been part of my life. I mean, if you go back to my sketchbooks when I was a kid, it's literally cover to cover drawings of Alien.
Yeah.
Alien eating a person, Alien having a pet dog, Alien, flying through space on a motorbike. It's all this ridiculous. It was just aliens all day.
Yeah.
And so, for me watching, and then coming back as an adult and watching the films and realizing, especially after I got into the film industry, realizing just how well made they actually are.
Right.
It wasn't just, oh, this is entertaining to watch. Like, I started understanding that the reason I must have attached to it as a kid was because it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something I note, and every time I watch it, I see something else. The one thing I noticed watching it last night was one of the best instances of nonverbal storytelling is the moment when Ripley grabs Newt and stumbles into the egg.
The egg, yeah.
And she looks.
It's 5 minutes of silence.
And she fucking looks at the queen, and then her and the queen
have a moment.
They have a moment.
A long moment.
Yeah.
And they go back and forth a few times.
Yeah, because what happens is the the Queen's henchmen come out,
Yeah.
then Ripley kind of fires the gun above the eggs, and there's this understanding that
Flamethrower.
Don't fuck with me or I'll kill all of your babies.
And what's really cool about that, and again, I think what Cameron really gets right here is that this is a film about motherhood.
Yes.
You know, like
it's two mothers defending their young.
yeah, exactly.
The interesting
And
thing
there is
about-
nothing more vicious in the wild than two mothers defending their young.
But the interesting thing about that is, the version I first saw, that was one of the things they removed. They removed the first scene where Ellen discovers her daughter's dead. So
Right,
you don't
yeah.
have that at all. So apparently Sigourney Weaver, I was reading, was really upset about that because it's the
obviously.
entire motivation for
Yeah,
the
her
rest
to
of the movie?
protect Newt.
Yeah,
at
you
the
were
end.
you were saying because I think at this point James Cameron was married to his producer Alan.
That seems to happen a lot, right?
It seems to happen a lot. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
got five wives.
Don't
at this
shit
point.
where you eat, friend.
I don't. Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Okay. No, sorry. I just think of sex in a different way.
You and I have very different lives.
Clearly, but there's I think they basically came to the same equation that Timur was talking about with Alien, or where they were kind of told. Oh, sorry, with Prometheus, where they were told you need to make this a movie under 3 hours because a movie that's close to 3 hours is hard to sell because if you have that playing in a theater, it's hard, you get less screenings.
And its 3D glory will blind you.
Yeah. And so what they did was they just removed an entire reel from the movie, and that reel was the scene where Ripley learns that her daughter has grown up and died in hibernation, which is kind of it's
pretty important.
That's that's like the entire crux of
that's horrifying.
that's almost the entire crux of Interstellar.
She missed her whole life. Exactly.
And also, that was kind of retconned in one of the video games now because you
Right,
play as,
in Alien
as Ripley's
Isolation,
daughter.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
which apparently is a great game. I'd never played it, but
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like Aliens Colonial Marines, which is
Which-
the laughing stock
it's
of every
a
video
terrible
game.
game,
It's
yeah.
supposed to be like the worst thing ever.
I played a lot of Alien video games growing up for some reason.
Well, yeah, I was going to get into real quick before I even do sort of my history with it, but the thing you had mentioned about that mother moment with them too, like whenever it showed Ripley or the Queen, I was like, oh fuck, like yeah, like this is fucking whatever. But then there's a moment that threw me out this time, and I never remembered it throwing me out before. Was when the Queen, like they're having that moment in the stare down, and there's two aliens on the side.
yeah, the henchmen.
The henchmen aliens, and they both like kind of come out of their little corners, and the Queen looks, it goes like, "Meh," and looks to the left, and that guy slinks back, and she looks to the right, and that guy slinks back. It was just like too symmetrical and hokey for me at that point. I was like, oh, you ruined it. It ruined that
Oh,
moment
no,
for me.
To me, that was
But it was-
what Timur was talking about, which is that is the silent conversation.
No. And the silent conversation between when it was just Ripley and the Queen, I really bought it. But for whatever reason, because these were just like, I don't know which aliens they were using, but they were like on sticks kind of coming out, or maybe it was the guys in the suits, but they have such limited movement. It was really like, slide to the left. Oh, no, we're not attacking. Slide to the right. And I was like, oh, just go back to the Queen. And then they did, and it's fine. And it doesn't break anything. Just this time when I watched it, I was like, this moment's so powerful. What the?
But I think I noticed that as I've always noticed that moment as being like,
That's one of the ones where you can see the suit and it's not a puppet, and it would have
Yeah.
been better to be a puppet.
However-
Because the suit, you can sort of see the arms
Yeah.
underneath the
Yeah.
bones on top of the arms.
from a timing standpoint, that makes the next moment work for me,
Yeah.
which is she starts to back out and that one egg opens up.
Yeah.
And
Which
she's
is
like-
sort of like the Queen threatening her again.
Yeah.
And that's when Ripley does the head tilt
Yeah.
and is like, oh, so that's how we're going to play.
See,
it.
No,
thi-
I think
but this is the
And
interesting
then
part
she
about
just nukes the room.
this is the thing. Now you can read. Now I've always read it like that. I've always read it that that's the Queen being like, "Come on, motherfucker." But I don't. This time, for whatever reason, it felt to me like that was just. It was the natural point for the egg to open. Like the Queen didn't have control over the egg.
I agree with that,
And
yeah.
then it was like Ripley, and it's fine because it's a monster she's fighting. Double crosses
Absolutely,
the monster,
yeah.
and like they had this understanding of like we'll let you go. She sees something that might happen. She's like, "Oh no, fuck this," and then just goes like.
I don't think that the Queen. See, that's the thing.
She
is,
enrages that
I
Queen
don't
when it moved.
think the Queen was going to let her go. The Queen was negotiating a moment of don't kill the eggs, keep these fucking things, get them into the hallway and cut their, cut their
Right,
throats
right.
effectively.
Yeah.
But it was like she was just trying to like almost get her back closer to one of the hallways
maybe,
where the
yeah.
henchman was hiding.
I know we want to move on to
slide to
Matt's
the right.
opinion, but the other thing about that is that this is for me is about Ripley trying to make a choice of who she is in the world at this point, and she's basically she's come here to save Newt. You know that everything here is about saving Newt, but she's also made the argument throughout the film that
She's
we
there
should
to
just
destroy.
we should just nuke this planet. There's no way that these aliens should ever be unleashed upon a human population. And as she's walking out the door and she sees that egg open up,
Reminder.
it's a reminder that, this is a possible, like no matter what I do, this is still a possibility. And I'm in the belly of the beast, so to
It's
speak.
a possibility if she nukes it.
No, she's in the belly of the beast right now, so she should take the opportunity.
I think
to
it's just
destroy.
vengeful, and there's nothing wrong with it being vengeful because these aliens have. Well, then it's the question of like, oh, one alien did something awful to all the aliens are doing. But you know what I mean? Like she absolutely, because these things are portrayed as monsters, she has every sort of moral obligation to destroy them in any way that she can. However, in that moment, it does just feel like a ha ha fuck you, and that's fine with me. I don't think it's like
I disagree with.
I mean, we can read it all different ways.
Isn't it amazing how this entire scene has zero dialogue? There's no score, by the way. The music stops, and
all you hear is steam.
There's an entirely complicated, communication and relationship that goes on.
Wonderful.
In the scene.
It's
It's great filmmaking.
To that point, like you guys were talking about how you could release this movie today. I mean, of the 2 years that we've been doing this podcast, I would put this movie alongside Mad Max as the best action movie. If you said this movie was made in 2015, I would say arguably it's the best action movie I've seen in 2015.
I don't think it's the best action movie. I think it's sort of the best almost like suspense or I guess horror. I don't know what it rides these things because the action in the movie, when I was younger, really grabbed me. In fact, I'll just sort of blend this into sort of my first thoughts about the movie. When I was a kid, I was all about it because I was all about the toys. Like the toys were fucking awesome to the point where my dad,
Were they wet?
we just put them in the tub all the time. My dad built. I had the queen.
They came with KY.
Yeah, I had the queen who probably stood
KY
maybe
for
like
kids.
a foot tall.
Yeah.
And my dad, because he knew how much I loved this stuff, and I had Ripley with the exosuit, he built me basically the elevator cage. Like out of wood.
Right.
Nice.
And like, so it would be always trying to like lock it in, like knock it in and throw it out the airlock or do whatever. So I just remember that, like that moment was always the little kid moment for me. As far as now and dealing with it, I think it is such an amazing film, but the action in it, I have a problem calling it an action movie, at least in 2015, because the action is probably, and I don't know if this will be the popular opinion in the room, is probably the weakest part of the film for me. Yeah. Because it's a lot of cut to Marines shooting and then cut to alien getting shot and then maybe acid. Like it's a lot of 1-2 back and forth when the action's happening. It's not confusing at all, but it's very sort of like, I get it. It's the suspense of the moment before the attack is what gets me involved, not the actual action of the attack.
That's probably the most dated bit. It's like today you would be able to have a shot where you can show the actual,
100%.
But the thing is,
alien getting shot by the Marine, and it's just back and forth stuff.
Which is
they assembled it in the edit room.
But the thing is, like I am so much like I think Timur, you tweeted or texted last night saying, like I just finished watching White Knuckled and all, and that's a point.
But that's a suspense to me, at least for me.
To me, the thing is like I am way more invested in that Marine shootout than I am in any action movie we've done in the 2 years we've been doing this podcast.
I understand that. I think we're kind of saying the same thing. I'm just saying the physical, like the watching of the action, the way the action is portrayed, and I'm not talking about why the action. Here's the thing: the action in this, I feel like, as if you put it aside, is weak. But because the movie does everything else right, it sets up characters in the beginning. When we meet all the Marines, they all have their own, at least the ones we spend the most time with.
They have a quirk.
They have their own little quirk. Each one has like a different thing on their uniform that differentiates them. I think Hicks had like a heart with like a locket on it that they never referenced, but it kind of like gets you to be like, oh, he's probably the moral one. And then like everyone, Vasquez has the fucking adios on her gun. Like there's all these small moments, and they have interactions with one another, and they take the time. Like there's an hour before any like action almost happens, and they take the time to make you give a shit about extensively this cannon fodder that any other movie would just be like, yeah, the Marines.
Yeah,
like
I think
that's why I think the suspense leading up to the action works, and that's why I don't mind that the action isn't up to today's
There's
standards.
a good side effect of the action being a little dated is that, you actually didn't see a solid held shot of an alien at all until the one that gets nuked.
Right, yeah.
In the water. And it's like, and I remember because I was like always rewinding the video to the moment because I wanted to see them.
Yeah, the water one's my favorite.
Scary. And it's like, because they couldn't show them, you're still kind of unsure as to even what they look like.
Yeah.
2 movies in.
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
unsure
an
what
hour
the-
and a half into the movie. You're right. There's no alien at all for the first hour.
Love it.
But see,
You know,
and
it's
I think
great.
I think Matt, what you're talking about is the aesthetic of the way that action scene is constructed. Like, there's no like wide shots showing, you know, or a cool angle or
Yeah.
anything. It's just kind of a series of cuts.
You wouldn't copy that today. You wouldn't
No,
go,
that's what I'm
this is an
saying.
amazing
my
action
point,
scene.
my
I have to
point
copy.
is that even what I think we've forgotten about in all the action movies we've done on this podcast is that those filmmakers today have access to that tool, to the tool set to do like these beautiful action sequences that are choreographed and that sort of thing. But I don't care.
Well, it's obviously
And
a
that's the point.
pendulum. Like the problem is because all these tools exist, a lot of people just focus on the tools to make the cool looking
and
thing.
and the point
and
is
then they
that
don't do the other stuff that this movie does so great.
But there's also something that I noticed specifically. Actually, it was funny. You guys are talking kind of about exactly this. Is that, and I felt for the first time that it was dragging was the first hour, only because they showed almost procedurally them getting ready, them
Right.
getting into the thing, them sitting down, them driving into the dropship doing its pre-flight check.
Yeah.
Dropship drops, dropship flies, dropship lands. Everybody gear up. And then what I realized later on, and what made it so fucking scary, is you realize how far away from home
yeah.
this group of guys are. This
Yeah.
group
It's
of
important.
people are.
that amount of time,
And that's what makes it scary, because you now feel, because you've put time
You've gone
into
through the
a journey.
Yeah.
You know, as a viewer, you're like, holy fuck, there is no help coming.
Yeah.
like no blockbuster has the balls to do that today.
Yeah. Like, you know, now we just blow up the city, but it doesn't, you know, like.
Doesn't feel like
I-
anything.
Do I
Yeah.
care? Yeah. I don't care at all. Whereas,
You don't
When-
see the people building the city.
yeah, when,
You know
when
what I
I'm
mean?
when
Yeah.
I'm under siege by the aliens in this movie, I am white knuckled.
You're
you know?
in there with them.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. And you know, it's funny. I was reading a story about the editor of this film, the Love. I can't forget his first name, but it was Lovejoy was the last name. And he
Great
cut,
last name.
Yeah, he cut 2001, and like James Cameron would do this thing, which is that in those firing sequences, he would just insert like white frames, and it was just you know, like you're talking about the guy who cut 2001, who does these like slow melodic movies, and Ray Lovejoy, yeah, and he's trying, you know, like he's up against a director who wants to like flash frame everything, and there's this whole staccato to it. But the thing that was interesting was the point that Timur was making earlier, was that the first half of this film is 2001. There's like 2 references to Stanley Kubrick, or maybe 3 references to Stanley Kubrick at the start of this film. There's Ellen's head that's superimposed over the planet, as we see at the beginning. There's the kid with the scooter
tricycle.
on the tricycle, which is kind of an allusion to The Shining. And I think you could probably argue that the ship and some of the writing on the ship, probably somewhere in there's probably a
There's an
reference to
entire
Dr. Strangelove.
blog about the fonts of sci-fi movies, and yeah, it's the same.
Yeah, the
it's
Oh, it's the same
it's
font.
called Euro style bold extended. I don't know. You know,
Okay.
I don't want to get into my font.
Font nerdism.
Yeah, but yeah,
You weren't into movies, but you were into fonts.
yeah, I've been into a few things.
yeah.
This is the only podcast about papyrus.
So, but Matt, I think we got into the weeds with you,
and that's
We
totally
didn't-
fine. So, I mean, that's just my history. I mean, it's kind of similar. I feel like to everybody's, but like I saw Aliens first, then I went back and saw Alien. I was too young to watch them. I was always scared of them, but I always loved them, and I think it got. And then obviously this sort of transitions into sort of more of my like middle school or high school years, but like I do credit, whether this is good or bad, the Aliens franchise and a little bit of Predator in a sort of way. And I always, even though I don't like the movies that they've made, I like that canonically they're sort of in the same universe. Like I like the idea, and I still think a good Alien versus Predator could be done.
They know each other.
Yeah, they hang out on weekends.
Yeah.
But I feel like it drove a lot of sort of what got me more into like darker sci-fi, or even like just sort of like, even though I was a pretty happy kid, I was very goth when I was younger, and like and it just like the aesthetic of it and the aliens. I'd seen the book. Was
The Geiger?
Giger. And all of his stuff was just so fucking not
It's
only
beautiful.
amazing, but like terror. Like nothing's been more beautiful and scary to me, I think, that I've ever seen in any sort of art design of anything. And now you're just going to tell me that there's a whole fucking movie universe about all this shit. Hell, and that's why I think I even forgive the bad, like Resurrection, Alien Resurrection.
See, I like that one too.
See,
It's
I
a
do
beautiful
too.
looking film.
I do
yeah.
too. But like, I can look like if I take away my love for the franchise and the art style, I can be like, oh. But I don't, because that sort of that passion for that just sort of can push me beyond the problems with it. So I think, though, I will say Aliens, the film that we are mostly talking about today, is by far my favorite of all of them. I mean, it fits all the right notes.
I mean, the first two are obviously they're sort of canon,
but I think Aliens is the crown jewel in the Alien franchise.
I still like the first.
They're
one,
two
though.
very different movies, which I like. I mean, they're like Alien is like straight up horror. Like it's horror in space. That's what it is.
Yeah.
In space, no one can hear you scream.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I dig this movie, and I'm glad that we're having a chance to talk about it.
You do know the log line for Aliens is this time it's war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
that's an interesting thing about James Cameron again. You know, like if we were just looking at Terminator 1 and Terminator 2, he is able to basically take a film, you know, like
and makes it better somehow.
Well, he
like,
reconfigures it in a meaningful way. You know, like it's like, okay, the first time it was this one alien and it was about, you know, like this horror movie in space kind of thing. The second time it's this war movie about a mother trying to save a child, you know, like, and he reconfigures it in a really profoundly workable way that, you know, and in Terminator 2, it's like the cyborg that was sent to kill you is now your
protector.
Yeah, exactly. And that changes everything we understand about
How's
that
James
film.
Cameron's relationship with his dad or his mom?
Pretty good as far as I know.
That's a good question, though, because he has a habit of these very, very strong female characters. Like, what is going on there?
Yeah.
Where's it coming from?
I like that about him.
Oh, it's great.
it's
I mean,
amazing.
I know I like it too.
It's not standard, right?
Yeah.
Who else does that?
Yeah.
I mean,
and back in that year as well. And like, remember, she
Ellen
got,
Ripley, Sarah Connor, you know, I mean, just kicking ass and taking names.
you could even argue the mother, played by Jamie Lee Curtis in True
Oh,
Lies.
absolutely.
Oh, yeah, eventually?
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. But this actually kind of brings up a good point because I think, you know, I was actually having a conversation online the other day about this because I was talking about doing this podcast.
Yep.
I was like, I'm doing homework.
Yeah.
And everybody was like, oh, I hated Aliens 3 and I hated Alien Resurrection. And I was like, okay, that's fine. That's fine. You know, it's opinions.
They're
you know?
lesser films than Aliens.
But one thing miraculously did happen, which is the arc of who Ellen Ripley is
and becomes
actually somehow
yeah
makes sense.
Is maintained. Yeah.
She in the first one, she's horrified and she survives. The second one,
she takes action.
She takes action. The third one,
she's
at
isolated.
She's isolated, but she's also kind of an expert at this point.
Yeah.
And then in the fourth one, she literally becomes one.
Yeah. Well,
she becomes the mother of the thing she hates the most. And that arc is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and think how different-
that's Breaking Bad.
How
You know, like
How different is that to say Star Wars 7, where they basically had an opportunity to make a really cool thing with this world that is set up, and they just made the fourth movie again.
Yeah,
You know? It's
I mean,
like, there's nothing new.
and that's the
I
thing.
don't
And
even
like,
remember The Force Awakens.
See, this
honestly.
is we talked about The Force. You know, we talk about action movies. The Force Awakens, you could argue, has some really amazing action movies. But I don't care. You know, like I don't care about anything that happens in that film. I barely remember it.
I still
Aliens
liked it.
is a movie.
I checked. Okay, here's the thing. I literally yelled at the screen.
Mm-hmm.
I checked out when the dude from Girls killed Han Solo.
Spoiler alert for The Force Awakens.
That's kind of the
yeah.
best thing about that movie to me. It's like, at least there's something
I was
new.
yelling. I was like, who the hell let that guy in this movie?
Here's so just coming back to Aliens for a second.
Just for a second, because then we got lightsabers.
Yeah,
God damn it.
There's a funny story about when James Cameron. So the famous story about James Cameron getting the deal to make Aliens was that he wrote up Alien on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper. Then he wrote S at the end of it, you know, Aliens, and then he put a dollar sign. He made the S into a dollar sign, and that's how he got the deal. Was like Aliens is going to make you money. And then so he kind of
That seems like a very James Cameron thing to do.
but he was riding like this wave after Terminator where he was like the it kid. Now this was a guy who was like
Terminators.
Was he, like, living in his car?
Yeah, he was
while
living in his
writing
car.
Terminator?
He was a you know, like he apparently the story goes that he would like sneak into hotels and steal the room service food leftovers that had been left outside of people's doors. And like now, like 4 years later, he was like basically
still doing that.
But just for fun.
Just for fun this
He
time.
didn't
right?
have to.
Did you know that Terminator had not come out when Aliens was shot?
Right.
So, like,
really?
that's
They
one of
didn't
the thing
know.
about the crew.
Wow.
Crew famously disrespecting them in
Yeah,
England
yeah.
because they're British.
They
is,
didn't-
they hadn't. No one had seen Terminator, and he was just this nobody.
I think there was
That's
a case that it
amazing.
hadn't come out in the UK, but like in Hollywood.
Well, this was my recollection of the
Okay.
behind
we'll
the
have to
scenes
fact check
featurette.
that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fact check.
But there was an interesting
on this show.
there was an interesting thing, which was that he was writing the screenplay, and then with Ripley in the lead, and then for some reason Sigourney Weaver, who'd kind of like blown up at this point as well, was not aware that an Alien sequel was being made. Remember, she'd made that movie, some 7 years earlier, and not really given it much thought again. And so he reached out to her, and she read the screenplay, and he was very impressed by the fact, and this is why she's appeared in a few more of his films since then, is that she turned up with a lot of serious notes about her character in that film. And a couple of the weird ones not weird ones, the one big one was that if she was going to do an Alien sequel, she wanted to die in it, and she wanted to have sex with an alien. That was her two things that she wanted. And eventually
both came true.
Eventually both those things happened, because those were notes that she had about that character. And I think you could argue that maybe aliens would be slightly more profound if she died in there. I don't know about the sex with the alien. That's a very difficult one. But they actually managed, like you say, the overall arc of the character actually makes sense, where she does at the end of Alien Resurrection. I think, you're right. The arc of this character throughout the entire franchise has been remarkable. And even if Alien Resurrection is not a great film, I do have a soft spot in my heart for Jean-Pierre Jeunet, the guy who directed it.
And I love basketball in space, so.
Oh, did they play basketball in space in that movie? I can't remember. The fact that she kind of becomes this alien hybrid, and it's something that the way in which we understand the alien, which I think has always been interesting. In the first film, it was just this kind of being, but there was some sort of mythology behind it. We saw the chest burster for the first time. We saw the space jockey. So we're kind of like, what is this thing? In the second film, I think what's profoundly interesting is that I don't think that the aliens are bad. I don't think that they're evil.
Well, they're animals.
They're just animals.
Exactly. And I think the film kind of like points at this kind of ecological side to them, which is that they are just a species that is fighting for their right to exist on this planet. And that, for what, they're like insects would do, is that they would fight for their place. And like you see when they're crawling through, there's that wonderful scene where the aliens are right above us, and we don't know that they're right above us, with the radar detector. And then we look up and we see them, and they look like a swarm of insects coming at you. And I think it's a real, and like the silence that we have with the Queen later on, I think it's a real key understanding that Cameron has, not to personify the aliens as like people, as creatures with malicious intent, but beings that have instincts that just don't happen to align with our own.
I have a question about the mother moment again. I was thinking this too. Is there, in real life, outside of movie town, is there an example where a human has had sort of an interaction with a predatorial animal in this sort of way, like enough of a knowing, like I could kill your baby bear or like whatever the fuck we're talking about? Or is this a thing where we're basically putting our own emotions onto an animal that cinema has just sort of done? Because of this moment and a couple other moments in films,
approach bears slightly differently.
No. I mean, I know how. I'm from New Hampshire. I know how to handle a bear. But the thing about it is that a real thing? Does anybody know? Or is that just something that one of these things that Hollywood has trained us to be like, oh yeah, you could totally have these like.
I don't know if you could have like.
I don't think so.
I don't think you could have a metamorphosis communication between two species like that.
I don't think that there's any.
But the one thing
that
is,
understands that a shotgun is going to take its hub and split into.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe like fire is an elemental thing that we can understand.
It'll hold them back.
Smart things like gorillas or crows, or I don't fucking know. I was just curious if like that ever came up.
But the one thing that I for some reason I got into this like internet wormhole years ago about botflies, and I think it was because of a Radiolab episode. But botflies are this creature that like uses the human body to gestate, and it's something that we see in this film as well, which is that the aliens gestate inside the human body. And it was like just this kind of like I think the idea that basically the DNA of the alien came from like our understanding of the way in which creatures and insects work is something that made it work. Like it wasn't just like they were this magical alien thing, or it wasn't like that they kind of, like you could argue that in Predator 2, for example, you saw a spaceship and you saw that they were hunters and they had autonomy and that sort of thing, and that weakens their power.
He was in town with a few days to kill, Shahir.
Yeah, exactly. But in Predator, like he was just this hunter, and you didn't really know what the hunter was about. And I think there's something like it's kind of like Jaws, like it's just this elemental force that's at you. You don't really
Except the queen, right? Like the others are insects for sure, but the queen, you can tell.
the queen has autonomy.
When she like betrays her, double crosses her,
And when the
blows
queen
her,
uses
puts
an
some
elevator.
grenades into her egg sack, the queen looks pretty mad.
Yeah.
And she's coming at her like
It's
and
a
she's angry about
mano
it.
a mano kind of thing. It's not
Because
like
that one has intelligence because it's it's the big. I think that's the good thing James Cameron added to the the physiology of the whole race was the whole queen thing. That's like kind of genius. And seeing the egg sac, and everyone's seen a big egg sac of an ant or whatever, so we all kind of go get it. It's
What's funny is
it's alien, but it's like Earth-like enough that you understand it and are scared by it, and you can.
In the special edition versus the theatrical edition, the scene where I think it's Hicks or someone speculates that there must be a queen out there that just lays eggs, some big fucking thing. That was a scene that was actually removed from the special edition. And I was like, oh, it's weird because that scene sets up what I see later on. I wonder what the
gives
film
it away though.
Yeah, I wonder what it would be like to see the film. And would you if you didn't even think about, oh, there must be a queen somewhere and where are these eggs coming from? What would your reaction be when you saw the ostensibly the queen for the first time? Would you be like, what the fuck is that thing? And you hadn't been primed for it.
It's great. I mean,
that would actually be interesting because if you were talking about insects and the things that really exist.
Yeah.
The thing I've always wondered was like with bees and wasps and hive ants even. Yeah. When a queen dies, is her last egg another queen? Like, does one transform into a queen?
Right.
I believe that happens in a lot of species. Maybe not when she dies, but
is one of them just flagged
transforms,
as potentially able to?
Because it's a pheromone thing. It's not only the way that the sort of specific insects communicate, but like when the queen no longer projects whatever pheromone it is, that lack is picked up by whatever fucking DNA
so there's
nonsense.
Just randomly one of them is like, oh, I'm next.
From my very weak understanding of it, but that's what I seem to remember.
As I recall from our gravity discussion in the Rogue One episode, I'm hoping a listener who's like,
oh yeah, write us in. If you guys know about bugs, you write us in and let us know how this works. Because
don't just leave a dead bug on our door, as some other people have.
Are we living together now? What is this?
Yeah, well, we have a thing.
Okay.
So back to the difference between theatrical and special. I think most of the special is better, and is certainly the Ellen discovering her daughter's dead is like hugely important, and how they cut that out is mind-blowing to me. However, there's a couple of other things that were cut out, and it makes the story much better, and adding them in is not cool. And specifically, it's seeing the colony with all the people alive and getting a phone call and going, hey, go check out this grid reference, and then them driving out to the ship. So when you first see the movie and that's not in it, all you know is that they've lost contact with the colony. You got no idea at all. And then they land there, and it's just this abandoned thing with like holes in the ground, and that's super scary. And then the other thing that you discover later is Ripley goes up to Carter Burke and goes, it says here in the logs, you sent them out to there to die. And that's the moment you discover that he's like this double-crossing, evil dude.
Yeah.
And they actually just give that away, that twist, earlier. In the special edition by having that scene.
I think one of the reasons James Cameron was didn't want to cut that scene was it was the first time that you saw the Covenant ship or whatever it was that was in Alien, and so he was like, without that, there's no
continuity.
Tether. Yeah, there's no tether to the original film
Other than Ripley.
And all the creatures.
A visual tether.
And the company.
Yeah.
And everything else.
The title.
I actually didn't.
So other than all that you hear, you are 100% correct.
I like the scene.
And the cat.
I like
the cat.
And the cat.
Jonesy
was back. I like them going out to seeing seeing the ship and then coming back and seeing Newt for the first time. If we're gonna make any criticism of this film,
let's do that.
The actress who plays Newt is not a great kid.
She's not consistent. She has great moments.
Wait, I love her when she was the traumatized.
Yep. Yeah. But the minute she starts talking,
and then the minute towards the end when she tries to be like a normal kid, like
that's
after the aliens
giving the thumbs up,
that's when she crosses into creepy for me, because it's like she was way more awesome because she played traumatized really well.
Yeah.
But I feel like we're ignoring the giant robotic elephant in the room.
What's that?
Oh, Bishop?
Exoskeleton?
Bishop?
Bishop 1, 2, but also exoskeleton fight.
So here's the thing. the exoskeleton fight happens in Avatar as well, and
Which sucked.
And that's the thing. I remember, like as soon as so the thing about Avatar again was like the Carter Burke character kind of appears in Avatar, played by Giovanni Ribisi.
A shitty version of
and
it.
he's like a shitty version of it. He's like this like
You
weird.
don't really hate him.
You don't really hate. Well, he's a caricature of a bad guy.
He's a bro.
Whereas Carter Burke, I kind of get what he's trying to do, and he's revealed in layers, and he's doing like little manipulations. The whole way.
Define you get what he's trying to do, because that's a slippery slope you're going down.
What Carter Burke's trying to do?
Yeah.
He wants to make money off of this thing. He wants to weaponize.
Okay, you
the evidence.
understand what he's doing. You don't empathize with what
No,
he's
no,
doing.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was like, Shahir.
He's not the hero of the movie to me.
Okay.
But
He's
the
played by like this inoffensive-looking, friendly guy.
yeah,
You
yeah.
think
He's a
great
company
guy.
man,
Yep.
and he's not like twirling at the mustache to like do some big evil scheme. He's just like motivated by money, and he's like,
Well, he is. He's motivated to do a big evil scheme for money. I mean, he's literally trying to get
No, but
Ripley impregnated and get her through cryosleep to get her through all the fucking checkpoints.
but I
kill
don't think,
everybody else.
but I don't think he's thinking about it like, oh, we're gonna like deliver this huge weapon and we're delivering evil to the world. He's kind of just like, oh, I can make some money off of this. This is what my company does, and he feels like a middleman to me, and like
No,
a very
it's very personal, isn't it? It's like we can personally get rich, you and me, Ripley, if we
Yeah.
do this thing.
Yeah.
We'll sneak it by them; they'll never know. Like he's not doing it on the company orders. He's out for himself.
He's out for himself. But I was going to say the exoskeleton. It was funny as well. Was that watching Aliens again? The first shot was this sort of like the robot arm cutting through a piece of steel, and I was like, did we steal that for Automatica?
I actually was looking at it, and I was like, oh, this is all the tie-ins all making sense.
I was
now.
like, I didn't consciously. Yeah, I was like, oh shit, look at that. It's like almost the same first shot, and then a robot arm.
and a
comes
robot
up-
arm. I marked it in my notes. We didn't even get to that whole breakdown when we won't have time to. But
And
yeah,
then laser scanner.
in the laser scanner. Yeah, I remember the laser scanner through smoke always impressed me, and I was like, it's something I wish we could have done on Automatica, but we didn't quite get.
We
to
didn't
it.
have 1985 technology.
Yeah, exactly.
the future's now.
But like as I was saying about Avatar, like the exoskeleton fight happens in Avatar, but it doesn't have the same kind of weight to it. In fact, at some point he pulls out a giant Bowie knife, and I remember just like laughing out loud.
Yeah.
Ass off at that.
But Ripley like showing us at the beginning of the film that she
Knows
lost
how to
her
drive it.
lost her license, became a truck loader, and then like
There was in the deleted scenes. There was actually a moment where they show her working. I think.
yeah, no, it's in
power
the
loader, yeah.
theatrical scene that
It is?
She
yeah,
puts
it's
a
in-
big missile into the ship with it.
No.
Yeah,
in
she
the
spins
very,
it-
very, very,
yeah.
very beginning.
Oh.
Like,
Oh, okay.
when
right.
she's still on like Space Station 1 or whatever
Yeah.
it was
Right.
called. Or was it Good Day or Good
Something like
Morning
that.
or some stupid name? But it was like, there's like a moment where you see her getting off work, climbing out of a power loader or something.
right,
like there's
right.
something. There's like some.
Unnecessary.
but it's unnecessary because we see it later.
But it shows that these things are a thing.
yeah.
That they're
They're utilitarian. They have a
in
purpose. They're
Avatar as
supposed to be.
well. They're, like we see
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, but the Bowie knives aren't a thing. That's the
Like,
problem.
why
That's
does it
when
have a Bowie knife?
That's when you jump ship, because it goes from a utilitarian thing that you have to use for combat to survive to a, oh, by the way, these things can fucking fight with knives.
Yeah.
Like, that's just awful.
I have the technology to create a power walking device, but I don't know how to use guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have knife.
But
So look,
The thing,
Oh, what were you saying,
I
Nigel?
was going to say there's plenty of problems with Avatar. What do you think are the problems with Aliens? For
Ooh.
me, it's that the Marines are kind of
cartoonish.
really shit at their job. It's like
Well,
they are not.
Well, their
good at-
commanders shit at their job.
Well, the commander.
Because the commander doesn't realize this is my favorite part. This is my favorite part of the film. So they go down into the alien thing, right? And it's near a reactor, and no one but Ripley thought about
You can't fire bullets.
You can't fire these exploding tip bullets down there because you'll rupture the fucking power plant.
Yeah.
And you see the commander just be like, "Oh fuck!" And he makes them all take their ammunition out.
And why don't they go out at that point?
Leave.
It's like, why are you
Leave.
walking
No, they
in
should
there?
leave. They should leave.
Yeah.
But I love that is like an addition of tension in that scene.
Yeah.
Like it's an additional threat in that scene that like you could have, as a writer, you could have that conversation right before they go out there or something like that. But it happens right in
clever.
the middle of it. It's good
You could have.
tense and escalation.
You could have also not had it. You could have just had them have a firefight and lose. But this is just another way of raising the tension before you even see an alien. It's
I
like,
think-
oh
Well,
my
he
god,
even-
they're not even going to be able to shoot.
He even says, "What are we supposed to use? Strong language?"
Yeah.
I love
You
that
know,
line.
like, he's
Yeah, I
like,
love
what the
that.
fuck? Like,
Yeah.
well, what's kind of funny is that Tom, our DIT on Automatica, was
Shout out
he
to
was-
Tom Wong.
Shout out to Tom Wong, former Marine. And,
Oh, is he? I didn't know
and
that.
he always used to tell me, he goes something to the effect of, if Marines were happy, we wouldn't be good at our jobs.
Right. And these
they
guys
need
were,
to be as miserable as humanly possible.
Oh,
And that's
wow.
how you get them to, do things, like
I think the Bill Paxton character is like,
Game over, man.
he's slightly cartoonish, but he's like, and the only reason I like him because I like Bill Paxton, it's just, but you could argue if you're watching this completely fresh and you have no idea who that actor is, he is a slightly
A bit grating.
exaggerated form of what these Marines should be. Like I think Vasquez, is actually
She's the best
great.
one.
Yeah, she's great. Like I get her. I understand what she, who her character is. The thing I was going to just briefly mention was my favorite scene in this movie, and I think the scene just works on so many levels, is the mid-lab, when they're trapped in the mid-lab.
Oh,
with
yeah.
the single face hugger.
Two face huggers.
Two face hugger. And what I love about that scene is it's terrifying because of the mechanics of the face hugger that we understand. It's infuriating because of the plot mechanics that got us to that scene.
the double cross.
The double cross. We realize that the lengths at which Carter Burke is willing to go.
Turns off the monitor.
Turns off the monitor, takes the gun. And then it's terrifying because, it taps into this sort of elemental nature in us, which is that it's about this mother trying to protect this child in this scene. And then it's exhilarating because the military gets involved and you get this sort of action hero moment at it, when they break down the thing. And this scene is just such it is to me the best scene in the movie. It's such a perfect encapsulation of why James Cameron is a good writer, is that he gets all those story strands to kind of like fuse into that one scene. And if you turn the if you put a camera in a theater and turned it on the audience during that scene, you would be hard pressed to see anyone not focused on what's happening.
And this is it is a horror movie. Everyone goes, oh, this is an action movie and Alien is a horror movie more. Because there's not a lot of action in Alien, I guess. But it's terrifying, this movie. And you wake up and the thing that's going to kill you is loose in the room and you've just woken up. It could be on top of the bed. It could be anywhere.
And it's quick.
Tries to break the window. And then they get this great shot from outside the room where she's screaming and there's no sound.
Yeah.
So no one can hear you.
Oh, and
you've got no weapons. There's
and that
nothing you can
shot
do.
of Carter Burke when he's at the Paul Reiser from Mad About You, we see a little video VHS, security camera, and he's tapping on it. Because you're like, oh, she's figured out this, she's trying to figure out ways to get people's attention. So she's pointing at the camera and he's tapping on it with his finger and then he turns it off and kind of nervously looks back. It's just like this great, we understand how everybody is going to react to that scene. It's so good. It's the best scene in the movie.
And you also get the sense with Paul Reiser in that moment that with Carter Burke that he's not really even sure that this is going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's waiting a lot.
Like
at that point.
he's putting his own life at risk essentially because if that goes wrong,
and it
they're
could
gonna kill
very
it
well
very
go
well
wrong.
go, and it did.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't go right,
The end.
he still has to convince all those other people to freeze them. Then he has to figure out how to kill them all.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, surviving the aliens and getting back to the ship.
It's not a great plan.
It's a long
No.
shot of long shots of long shots. But he's so dedicated to making that trillion credits.
But you see
And I
that kind
think
of like
that-
nervousness on his face.
that he's like, well, fuck it. I'd rather die, trying to do this
Sure.
than
I've gotta
having
do something.
gone home and not had made
And
that.
think about that compared to
not
Giovanni
made that
Ribisi's
percentage.
character in Avatar. It's
Sure.
none of that.
he's just a guy.
And I think the reason Burke even tries it is because he knows, due to the fact that he has sort of company authority, not necessarily military authority, but that Bishop will listen to him because the company's made
It
Bishop.
feels like Bishop would obey anything he says. And there's an earlier scene where Bishop says, oh, he told me
he told me not to
and he
destroy
was
the
very-
specimens.
Yeah, and he was very explicit about it.
So this is the one scene that's in the screenplay and they shot because it's in the magazine that I had. When Ripley
Alien
goes down
Digest.
to rescue Newt and she goes into the nest, she discovers Burke in the wall.
Oh, yeah, I remember
And
that.
he's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
please kill me. And she gives him a grenade or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's never made it into the special
yeah, that
edition.
shit's hardcore.
And I
Like, that's
remember-
you can actually YouTube that. That's on.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I feel like I've
I
seen
just
that.
saw it on Reddit like a month ago. It was amazing.
Yeah. And I think Sigourney Weaver had some comments about that because she didn't know if he would be, if he had enough spine to kill himself. She
Right.
wanted he doesn't seem like he seems like too much of a narcissist to kill himself. Which I just
things always change when you change when you're sort of like glued to a wall.
when you're so sweaty and wet, you just got to get out of this thing.
I'm so hot.
Let's get me out of here. I love that little detail as well as what they talk when they go down into the hive and they're like, it's really hot in here. It's like a detail that you unless someone said it, but it's
it's a dry heat, man.
It's a dry heat that'll kill you.
Well, what's actually awesome is I've never noticed it until this time, but when the reactor's melting down and she goes down to rescue Newt, there's red hot pipes everywhere.
I noticed that too.
And I didn't notice that before. And I was like, oh my God, can you imagine how fucking hot it is in there?
Yeah.
And then you realize in high def and 4K or whatever I was watching on my
It's a
TV,
projection.
seeing how she's just fucking dripping in sweat. And you're like, wait, she's just as wet as the alien is now.
See, now she can understand.
Now she gets it. They're just uncomfortable.
That's what the aliens are. They're just
they're just secreting that spunky nonsense all the
they
damn
go
time.
swimming in Alien Resurrection. So
That's
maybe,
true.
Yeah.
Oh, also, side note: when they're driving out from the first encounter, right, and the pilots are going to go pick them up in their car, and then the alien gets in. So I noticed this, and I never noticed this before. So as the one guy's getting in, while the 5x5 pilot, they stole that line for StarCraft, actually. They used that for the pilot in StarCraft. She calls him in, like, come on in. That dude's name, as he touches that spunk, like, nonsense is Spunkmeyer.
Oh, really?
And, like, come on, Spunkmeyer. And he has his shit in his hand. I'm like, oh, fuck. That obviously goes badly.
That's another of the small complaints about this movie. It's like when they first land, they land, the door opens and the machine, the APC drives out and they instantly dust off. And it's like, and then they go somewhere and park with the door open.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
They're like on the ground for 1 second and they're out of there for safety. And then later on, they're just like,
Yeah, Nigel, you brought up this before. Let's try to figure out before we call this, because I think it's safe to say that we all really like this movie. But like,
is there anyone who could argue could say Aliens is a bad movie at this point?
I don't think so. I think there's bad aspects like what Nigel just brought up and things that don't quite add up.
Yeah,
but they're minor compared to most movies.
The one thing that always bugged me, like even since I was a kid, is when Bishop picks up Ripley and Newt from the collapsing deck, and the Queen is kind of coming out of the elevator. It didn't even bother me that the Queen went into the elevator. It's obvious that the Queen is kind of smart.
Yeah,
and that she,
no, but you know what I just picked up, because that always bothered me too. Ripley tries that elevator and it doesn't go.
Yeah.
She's waiting for it to come down, and then the other one arrives. She gets in that one, and then the first one comes down.
Yeah.
So there's two of them.
Yeah.
The first one comes down, and the
it's a
Queen
different
just
elevator.
gets into it.
But she'd already, she didn't have to hit a button. She just got into it and it brought her up. She might not even have known.
The Queen doesn't have to pick the button or anything.
No, that's not the problem. I'm just saying the Queen had enough prescience to say,
to use an elevator.
That one went into that hole, so I'm going to follow it into this hole. Anyway, that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, and I feel like it's one of those things that didn't work in the edit, so they cut it out, kind of a thing. Is Ripley and Newt jump into the ship, the landing gear grabs some gack,
caught,
grabs some gack, and then it just takes off.
Yep.
And then the amazing, with the music crescendo and the nuke goes off behind them.
The nuke looks amazing as well.
It
looks
does.
incredible.
Yeah.
Better than I've seen in any other movie, really.
You know what that nuke is? It's cotton wool and a light bulb underneath.
I bet it
Have
is.
you seen that?
Yeah.
And then they just raise the light bulb up.
That's insane.
And so it got brighter.
Yeah.
And so then, of course, getting to my favorite part of the film, which is, they land, they think they're safe, and then the Queen alien just shoves a good 6 feet of fucking tail right through Bishop's
and rips him in half.
Rips him in half, and rips him in half in the best way. Cross-handed, opposite direction. In the I specifically don't give a fuck about you manner.
Yeah.
But it's sort of, for me, was always like, I watched the landing gear close, and I did not see a
Giant
12,000-pound Queen alien climb into that hole.
Right.
That part bothered
I don't
me.
think they show it close though. They show it on the planet, because that always bothered me too, and I was watching for that.
Yeah, it's a silly little thing.
It's funny because
to me, it was always just kind of like the cliffhanger, like you talk about in Misery, where the car goes off the cliff, and you saw him go off the cliff,
but
then he jumped out, and you didn't see it, and it's like, come on, man.
When Ridley Scott,
I would have rather seen the fucking Queen hugging the side of the ship.
No,
while it was
but then that
flying
would break
into
the
space.
tension.
That's such a good twist, false ending, same as the original.
Yeah, that's the thing. It was like, and when Ridley Scott talked about it, he said he wanted to actually create a fourth act in the film, and it's kind of the same like. We've seen it in horror movies since then. It's basically the one last stand of the villain. But I think, so when it came, it does, it does feel like it's like you say, like it's where did this alien come from? How did it get on the ship? Kind of thing.
And
But
it's not a small one.
It's not a small, tiny alien.
You know, like this thing is like 35 feet tall. You know, like
and what we would learn from Alien 3 as well is that it managed to lay one more egg. Because in the start of Alien 3, you know, there was a face hugger.
Which
as well.
doesn't make any sense because its egg sac was.
oh,
Who knows? Who knows?
Wait. But
But it still
there is a
works.
It could
potential.
have
Wait,
carried
there's a
an egg under its
potential.
arm like a football.
There's a potential.
It's not like the Lord of the Rings where they have like multiple endings. It's actually still naturally
I'm totally
works.
fucking wrong. I was gonna say the alien that killed Spunkmeyer may have thrown one in there, but that one
It's a
crashed.
different one, yeah.
I know what it is. Is it that it's Newt was supposed to have been impregnated after all?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's what it
that
was.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh.
How I was actually mad at the end of the movie thinking of Alien 3 because I was
Because you know how
here are
sad it
these-
is.
Well, here are these great characters, and like Newt's actually a great character. She's a dodgy actor, but like
yeah, she never
you know.
acted. I mean, she did little bits parts since then, but she never like went on to fame.
And obviously, the man, the myth, the legend, Michael Bean.
yeah. And,
so
and
good.
like the Alien 3 just throws it all away, you know, for not great.
Well,
results.
Alien 3 had a really tortured production. You know,
Sure.
New Zealander Vincent Ward spent a lot of time writing that, and originally it was supposed to be on this wooden planet.
And that was the problem.
Yeah, that was the problem.
It was
So-
supposed to be like in a forest.
Yeah.
no,
like-
no,
like-
on a wooden planet, like a planet made out of wood.
What?
Yeah, like it was.
Excuse me?
It was because
Waterworld without the water?
yeah, exactly. It was some sort of like wooden space station or something. I can't remember.
I
the
thought it was
exact-
just a forest.
I'm glad that it was just a.
We getting into Spelljammer territory? Like, what the fuck is this?
So it could have been worse.
It's like
is what I'm
Earthworm Jim
And so-
meets the
and, like-
alien.
Yeah.
And you know, like Aliens had made so much money that they weren't going to like let this thing go, but they spent so much time in development hell with so many directors coming and going. Eventually, they landed on David Fincher, who was like a young upstart music video director, and who they could kind of push around. You know, he didn't have like a Terminator under his belt to kind of warrant any decision he made. So Alien 3 had a little bit of a tortured history
Sure.
to getting to the screen, and I think one of the results of that tortured history was the jettisoning of these other characters in order to like, you know, basically they just kind of like restart the film.
Yeah, they rebooted it by
Yeah.
killing everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily the best way to go about it, but then, you know, we didn't, I think, you know, like, remember the time in the period, we didn't think of movies as contiguous as we do now, you know, where they were kind of like self-contained pieces. So,
Well,
yeah.
however, hating that part aside,
Yeah.
power loader fight. How
Power-
fucking awesome was
It's
that?
the best thing in the. It's
just
so
like-
good.
And-
it's one of the best justified one-liners as well.
Get away
With-
from her,
You bitch. It's
and that's just mom. And at that point, it's
Mom.
mom versus mom.
And Nigel, I don't know if you were thinking about this as well. It was just like you know, because I have a wife who's a mother, you know, like understand that impulse. Like
I was waiting for the moment where you referenced that you had a family in this
Yeah.
episode. Because it does happen every time. So I'm glad we got there.
You know, you have Marvel, I have a family.
That's true. Yeah.
But it was just this
Fair point.
This idea that there is the instinct that mothers have to protect their young goes beyond beyond personal you know,
Safety and
safety
logic
and
and- yeah.
logic. It's like, I will, if you do anything to like even look at my kid wrong, I will destroy you, kind of thing. And that's why the two queens kind of fighting it out kind of works for me.
And it's also the first time any of the characters ever has an actual physical advantage
Yeah.
over one of the aliens. Because the aliens are faster, stronger, fucking acidic blood. I mean, they you know, you just can't even get close to the damn thing to kill it. You know what I mean? But this is the first time that she has a physical advantage. Anyone in any of the
I would
movies
argue
has had
that
a physical
the
advantage.
acidic blood thing was still probably a problem for the power loader. Like if you
Well,
of course.
that's why she
But-
wasn't crushing it.
Yeah.
But she could at least hold it,
Right.
Yeah. And then throw it down the airlock.
Throw it in, you know. But it's how else are you going to fight a 35-foot tall fucking cockroach wasp? You know, like
I love
made of dicks.
I was reading about wit, sweaty dicks. It's just like Aliens is a wit, sweaty dick monster.
I think I just found our pull quote.
But I loved. I was reading about the writer of the original Aliens talking about like why they came up with the acidic blood thing, and it was a narrative construction. It was like, why don't they just shoot the alien? And it was like, well, if you
it'll burn right through the hole.
it'll burn right through the hull, and that was kind of this.
But
They
they
would
didn't really have guns on that ship.
no, they did have. He was writing, and he was like, why? You know,
so
where
that
it is.
it's so that they wouldn't have a gun. Bro.
Yeah, so that they wouldn't have to have a gun against it. You know, like they needed some sort of narrative construction to prevent them from.
And that's
shooting.
fantastic.
It's a great like.
I mean, that's the best part of the whole thing is
Yeah.
that, you know,
aliens.
Let's take away humans. Let's take your technology away from you.
Yeah.
And let's see you.
Reactor's going to blow. Can't shoot.
Exactly.
Can't shoot it with small round
Can't
fire
shoot it with-
because it's
Although
going to burn through
she
the
does
shit.
end up like firing guns down there later on. Like she does.
Oh, she doesn't give a
matter
shit.
by that point.
Oh, she didn't give a fuck by that
it
point.
was like, we'll just shoot it and
But
get out of here.
isn't that also great? Just the raising the stakes of everything. It's like they get their butts kicked. And then they lose their APC, and they've only got like 50 rounds left, and a couple of pulse rifles, and a half full, flamethrower.
They actually catalog it.
Yeah, and then they go to med lab, and it's like, oh, it's all bad, and then it's like, hey, look out the window. There's going to be a nuclear explosion in 4 hours. It's like, oh my god,
the ticking clock on this film is so good.
And I do love that Ripley duct tapes two weapons together.
Yes.
I like that
Yes,
a lot.
she does.
But it's great is that she just learned to use that weapon a few
But they set up her learning.
Exactly. Yeah, they
Yeah,
set
they
up.
didn't just make her like
And they made it
Rambo
romantic.
straight away.
Yeah,
It's funny. I was.
I
Thinking
like
that
their relationship.
James Cameron is the only guy that think would firing guns would be foreplay. You know, like there's no.
Oh, I think Michael Bay's probably in that camp.
Well, no, but he'd have her naked bent over a car or something first.
But there would still be guns, and Bumblebee would probably be filming it.
Right.
In the movie, you'd see Bumblebee filming.
Transformers the porno.
I mean, that's basically what it's turned into now, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Anyway, guys, let's do final thoughts. Because we're all pretty much there. Let's do 1 sentence final thoughts for Aliens, and I'll let Shahir go first, and then I'll go, then you guys can finish it up.
Love it. Better than most action movies that I've seen in the last 10 years.
There we go. I think the amount of restraint it shows, even for the time, is wonderful, and I wish more big budget stuff that had stuff under its belt could actually show that restraint to make their big moments feel bigger.
Aliens, there is no finer movie
Wow.
for me.
Citizen Kane, eat your heart out.
Aliens, the movie that keeps growing with you.
Okay.
In your chest.
In your chest, and eventually it'll burst out.
Well, Internet, this has been the only podcast about the films, well, actually, I guess films, because we talked about all of them, but Aliens with an S specifically, $.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was awesome having
Thanks
you.
for having
us.
When you're not crawling out of the goddamn walls, where can folks find you?
Ooh, you can find me on nigelstanford.com.
Where you'll see Automatica, Cymatics, all behind the scenes, and all
Is
of
that-
your music.
Is that the best place to find Automatica?
Yeah, you'll find Automatica there. My albums, you could download them, listen to them, stream them if you felt so inclined. That'd be cool.
And you should.
And you should. You should do a rescoring of Aliens. I think that would be really interesting.
Well,
Whoa.
another
Yeah.
small anecdote is I feel like I must have ripped a bit of the score off when I scored this other movie, Timescapes, a few years back. And
copyright infringement.
Don't tell them that.
Copyright lawyers, please just tune out right now.
And there's nothing to see here. But yeah, like the score is great.
I would love to
Beautiful
hear
score.
your score. You rescore Aliens. I think that would be amazing. Timur, where can we find you?
You can find me at timurcivan.com. Probably best place. And the usual.
How do you spell it? Just for us?
TimurCivan. And then Timur Civan at Twitter, Timur Civan at Instagram.
You're all combined. I like
oh
that.
yeah, well that's what happens when you have a weird fucking name. It's
You
like
can get it everywhere.
Yeah, it's like, let's see, Gmail. Oh, available.
it's free.
Instagram, available.
Done.
Twitter, available.
Nice.
Speaking of weird names, shahirdaud.com is where you can find me. That's SHAHIRDAUD. You'll find Automatica on there as well, and a bunch of other stuff that I've done.
And you can also find me at MatthewKroll.com. That's KROL. I guess they cut it off when my Polish ancestors came to Ellis Island from Krolomanowalinski. You can also find me at Skeletor, the number 4 PREZ on Instagram, and Emperor MSK on Twitter. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for writing in to onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com, and also for iTunes reviews. If you guys want to drop us some more of those, we always love seeing them. We prefer 5, but we'll take as many stars as you're willing to give us.
Just 1 star is all we need, man.
I know. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.